I get the pleasure of introducing our guest speaker, Mike Beckham. Mike is the co-founder and CEO of Simple Modern, which is an Oklahoma-based company that sells drinkware and other lifestyle products. I'm sure you've seen their stuff around. My favorite is the Brahms collaboration. Love that. You all may have seen Simple Modern's mission statement, which says, "We exist to give generously." And that, in the Cultivate world, is what we would call a redemptive opportunity, which this redemptive opportunity really lays the foundation for what Mike does and what he does through Simple Modern. The foundation of Simple Modern is extremely important. And I know we will touch on that in a bit today, but in order for something to have an impact, there has to be consistency. In the case of a business, there needs to be consistent messaging, consistent output, consistent leadership. And what I most appreciate about Mike is that when you're with him, he's fully present. If he knows his plate is too full and he won't be able to be completely present, he won't commit to it. He won't put it on his plate. Which this I see as a characteristic of Mike's that allows him to be consistent in all that he does, which, if you catch where I'm going, means that what he does, even with Simple Modern and without Simple Modern, will have a lasting impact. So that brings me to our topic for today, which is creative collaboration. The inspiration for this topic came from an old blog that Mike had written on this theme. So to kick us off, I'm going to read a definition from that blog, which says, "We define collaboration as solving problems by incorporating the strengths and ideas of the entire team. Collaboration is almost always helpful, but this is especially true in creative endeavors." So I'll invite Lance, which is going to moderate our time, and Mike Beckham.
All right. You guys feel free to get up and get more food, and you can ask questions about. You can give Mike anything. Doesn't have to just be about collaboration. So be thinking about what you want to jam on with Mike, because we're going to talk for a little bit about collaboration. And then we'll talk about other stuff. So we'll have some Q&A time. So, okay, Mike, this is a big topic for you. Not only do you write blog posts about it, but it's one of your Simple Modern core values. So this has been something you've been thinking about for a long time. Why is collaboration worth a discussion around today?
I think it's a really relevant topic for a number of different reasons. I mean, one thing just to kind of right off the bat, there's all these different versions of myself I could be as a leader. Probably the worst versions would be ones where, like, I frame it as I'm really capable and I just, a genius and 1,000 helpers, and that's the kind of company I'm going to run. And we've probably all been around that kind of like culture at least once in our life, where there was somebody who just thought they had all the answers and everybody else was there to just kind of execute on their. So really don't want to be that type of leader. And I think that obviously collaboration in a collaborative environment helps prevent that. But I think even more than that, it's just not true. The reality is that nobody has all the answers, no matter how smart you are, no matter how experienced you are. There's people coming from different backgrounds, different perspectives, have different inputs that you don't have, and they're going to be able to oftentimes have much better insight than you do. I remember reading something that it was probably a venture capitalist wrote this, but he said he spent the first 20 years of his career thinking that he always had to be the smartest person in the room or the guy that had the answer to the question. And it took him 20 years to realize that being a really effective leader was actually just understanding who in the room probably did have the best answer to the question, which is a very different way of thinking about it. And so I really wanted to build a collaborative environment. Another almost kind of first principles way to think about this is that the impact you can make in your life is proportional to how much you can foster collaboration. Because you have a limited amount of time. Like my fortunately with Simple Modern and with some of the different business ventures I'm involved with, there's far more people that would like to work for them than we can even employ. And so there's this ability potentially, if you create a real collaborative environment, to have a far bigger impact than my life could ever have by itself. But that's only possible if you're creating an environment where other people can contribute. And the number of hours in my day is always going to be fixed at 24. And so when I was in full-time ministry, one of the principles that really stood out to me was this idea of spiritual multiplication, that if you really want to make an impact with your life and spiritually multiply yourself, then that means investing in people and helping them to then invest in other people and impart to other people. And one of my favorite quotes I ever heard on this subject is that you can count the number of seeds in an apple, but you can never count the number of apples in a seed. And so I actually think developing people and empowering people and collaborating with people are tied together, interestingly. And I'll give one more kind of like, I think the thing that people typically appreciate about when I talk about subjects is I typically come at them from like an atypical route. So I'll use another kind of spiritual analogy here to talk about collaboration. What you do matters, but it turns out that why you do it is even more important. This is like a thematic in the New Testament and the words of Jesus, but even more so, it's important because people are going to watch what you do and then they're going to assign why you did it, whether you ask them to or not, right? We do this every time, every day, hundreds of times without even realizing it. Why did that person smile at me that way? Why did I not get a call from so-and-so? Why did this person get the raise and I didn't get the raise? And then we kind of assign causality to it. And so it's exceptionally helpful when we get insight into why people did what they did. And that it turns out growth as a person, growth in your career, development, whether that's spiritually or professionally, intellectually, actually comes from being around other people that are further ahead of you. And not only watching what they do, but hearing why they did it and having them unpack that.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons why, a lot of things are more caught than taught, because it's just observing and then understanding like the internal thought process. And so I think collaboration is another great way where you're unpacking not just here's what we're going to do, but why are we going to do it? How do we get to that decision? And that it turns out that process and that why behind how your organization or your team or your family gets to a decision actually matters as much as the decision itself, especially in the way that it's going to impact your kids or your junior teammates or whoever. Mm-hmm. So very interesting topic, one that I've probably done, I've probably been all over the spectrum in terms of doing it really ineffectively and then at times doing it effectively. And so, but at the very least, it's been an area that we focused on. As was mentioned already, I think we have 5 core values at the company. It's one of the 5 values, so this is something that we really think about. And as a result, when you make anything a core value, the other thing that comes along with it is you start to understand all the trade-offs that come with it. Basically, I'm more convinced than ever that there's almost no universal, if you always do this, it's always good. It's it always comes paired with a trade-off, and collaboration comes paired with some trade-offs, and we can talk about that as well.
Okay, so Mike, talk about, we all want to innovate. Talk about creativity and collaboration in that relationship and where new ideas come from and how collaboration impacts the innovation process.
Yeah, so I think that, I guess I'll start with the definition of creativity. The way that I think about creativity is that there's infinite possibilities of how you could do anything or approach any particular thing, but because we have these constraints of time and resource and focus, that our mind very quickly becomes a filtering mechanism that really filters down from the infinite to a very small number of possibilities. And that small number of possibilities are usually pattern matched to just things that we have seen before. And the problem with that is that basically your prior experience becomes almost like a ditch that your thought wants to fall into, if that makes sense. So if you're trying to do something innovative, a lot of what you're trying to do is just stay out of the ditch. And it turns out that that's a lot easier said than done because it is expedient, it's easy, it's the least taxing mentally, it's the easiest to get other people to understand, and that sometimes collaboration, the downside can be that you can get groupthink and it's easier to fall in the ditch. But the upside is that all it takes is one person in the room staying out of the ditch and saying, hey, wait, there's something right over here. And then everybody can all of a sudden kind of get out of the ditch with them. And often, that's what I need. Often as a leader, I can be very myopic or we can be pursuing a strategy and all it takes is somebody to say, but wait a second, what if we thought about it in this different way? And you're like, well, that's brilliant, actually. We should think about it in that different way. And that collaboration is the idea that when you get more voices that are speaking into something, I think you have more opportunity for truly innovative and bespoke thoughts. And then the second piece of that is that it's interesting, we were talking on a podcast I do about remote versus in-person work. And one of the things about in-person in particular that I've really seen is that there's a particular type of kind of serendipitous conversation. It's really difficult to create in a totally remote context. But everybody in this room has probably been a part of a conversation before where somebody throws out the kernel of an idea. It's not very fleshed out. It's maybe not even very good, but it's a kernel of an idea. And somebody else says, yeah, but wait, but what about if we did that, but we did it like this? And then somebody's like, yeah, well, we could stack this thing on top of it. And all of a sudden, this thing's kind of coming alive and it's taking shape. I mean, the analogy I'd use here is if you've ever watched a writer's room for a comedy like The Office or something, and how do they get to the episode? And usually it's like, it's not like one person's like, I've got the whole idea, here's the whole script. It's more like, here's a funny idea, like what if Michael went on vacation with Jan? And then they riff on that, and then it's like, oh, what if they took a picture? Oh, what if he accidentally sent it instead of to packer to packaging? And it's like, and you can almost like see how different people probably kind of chimed in, and then you get this like really, really funny thing, but it probably built in layers through collaborative kind of conversation. And so that's what you're trying to do. In terms of how you do that effectively, I think that's a lot of where the question is. And I'll make one more point here before I come back to this. So to be effective at collaboration actually is as dependent on what you don't collaborate on as it is on how you collaborate. Does that make sense? So you actually have to kind of define, okay, here are all the things we're not going to collaborate on, where we're going to be more single-threaded, we're going to be more directive, we're going to be more structured, so that we have the capacity, the time, resources, the mental ability to actually go in this much more taxing process of collaboration in some areas. A great example of this, if you've had kids, if you're asking kids what they want to do every step of the way, it's just like you get nowhere, right? It's like your entire day, by like noon, you're just like, I'm done. But it's like, it is important to involve them in the decision-making process. And so like you pick your spots. You're like, do you want to wear this shirt or this shirt, But if every 5 minutes you're asking them, hey, I don't know, what should we do next? It would just be terrible. And it's the same way with organizations, that if you collaborate about everything, there's always going to be dissenting opinions, and it's just very difficult to really be effective at all. So instead, you say, we're going to carve out these things to really collaborate on, and then all this other stuff, we're going to be less collaborative on. So a really good encapsulation of this, that when Lance and I were talking earlier this week, this is actually kind of one of my hills I'll die on. We are, and I hope I'll thread the needle right on this, we live in a culture that says diversity is always good. And what I would actually posit is that effective organizations are able to do two things simultaneously. They are able to be extremely non-diverse across one set of characteristics so that they can be more diverse on another set of characteristics. So what that means is, as an example, imagine if you're in an organization where the core values of the organization are constantly up for debate. You could show up on Wednesday and be like, hey, let's rethink everything we're about, right? Would you want to work in that organization? No. That'd be chaos. It'd be maddening, right? So in an organization, one of the reasons why core values are so important is because there's agreement. It's like, okay, Matt, generosity is going to be a core value. You're about it, I'm about it. You're not going to show up on Thursday and say, hey, why was my paycheck not 10% higher? Why did we give that money away? We're not going to have to relitigate that. We're not going to have another collaborative discussion about what our values should be. We just know that. And because that's a given, we can spend our time collaborating on how do we get more wells in this region of Africa, right? And so like the idea is you're going to be extremely non-diverse and extremely non-collaborative in some areas so that you can be diverse in thought and collaborative in other areas, if that makes sense. and that good leaders are able to see that balance. And I just think culturally, I don't think we've caught that bit. I think we've just kind of said, like, diversity is always good across everything, like, there's no qualification, and that's like chaos. And just like it's extremely stifling and non-innovative when you're like, nothing's up for discussion. So you're trying to live between those two things. So for us, we use our values, we use our values and some other things to kind of really create clarity around where we're going and what we're doing. And then it helps to define the areas that we're going to be highly collaborative, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So before we leave innovation, I've heard you talk about that, everything is stolen from somewhere. There's hardly anything that's like a brand new idea.
Creativity.
How does that play in?
Creativity is forgetting where you start from. It's kind of like my favorite thing. Like there's nothing truly new under the sun. There's kind of like, there'll be new technology, there'll be new application of old ideas, but like history, it doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. It's all this stuff is kind of saying the same thing. And so one of the things internally with us is, when you're running a consumer brand, for example, you cannot be a dupe, but you also are stupid if you're not paying attention to the great ideas that that are already existing in the marketplace. Sometimes that's another hydration company, but often that's somebody in media did something really interesting with how they promoted their new movie, and we are happy to borrow that idea. And like I don't know if anybody saw our release for our Halloween collection, but they did kind of a movie theme, and it was just very cool. It was just, but it was like, we're happy to borrow things from other people. Mm-hmm. So I think that where you really get in trouble when you define creativity as, I want to do something nobody's ever seen before. Mm-hmm. Like that's actually pretty stifling. Mm-hmm. I think instead, creativity is riffing off of ideas that already exist out there in the marketplace and in general, and saying, how do we put our unique twist or our unique spin on things, and how do we take elements that might be out there and combine them in unique ways. And collaboration is fantastic for that, partially because like the culture and the inputs that different people on my team have been exposed to are different than me. And so anyway, I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. So practically, how did that work on this recent, the Brahms collab with the recreation of the Brahms cup that was impossible to find in town? How did that
how does it come to be? So somebody on our marketing team said, hey, it's National Ice Cream Day, it'd be cool if we did something promoting National Ice Cream Day. And I think they contacted Brahms, and Brahms was like, yeah, that's great. It's fine if you kind of, we would be willing to lend you a uniform if you guys wanted to kind of do something, creative around that. And so then we printed up a cup that we just kind of created this idea of well, what if you took the way their cup looked, but you made it on an insulated cup? And we showed it to them, and we said, hey, we would, we actually think people would buy this. And they're like, I don't think so. It's not really a thing we do. And so we just put it out on social media, and the post blows up. And so this kind of gets the attention of everybody at Brahms. And we got together in a meeting with them in my office and kind of started to try and hash out, hey, what would a partnership look like? And again, those processes, especially you're working with organizations outside, they have to be collaborative, right? Because you're trying to get their buy-in, but also you have perspectives of from production perspective, from what the customer's going to want, what'll look best. So you have opinions and perspectives you're bringing to the table, just like they do about their brand, what they think they'll work in their stores, the price points, different things. And so we do a lot of this actually, licensing in general is highly collaborative. And licensors will drive you crazy sometimes with their preferences and their ideas. And so you're kind of trying to say okay, well, how do I within, kind of the parameters that they give me, how can I be the most creative? How can I do something that doesn't look like everybody else? How can I cast vision for them? Another part of collaboration that's really good, it is actually completely different than anything we talked about, but I think it's a good point. I was talking with another pretty prominent business person in the Oklahoma City area yesterday, and I was telling him about our company structure, and he was like, that is really weird. I've never heard of that before. So I was almost, I think I was 100% of the capital that started Simple Modern. We were bootstrapped, and I was 100% of the capital. But for a variety of reasons, I am not 100% equity owner. In fact, on the profits interest, I'm like 45%. So I'm less than half of the profits interest from Simple Modern. But for a while, we had the profits interest and the voting interest broken up into separate. Like sometimes you'll see this happen, like tech companies have famously done this, where founders can kind of keep control. And so, but what's interesting is not necessarily that I broke it up, it's how I broke it up. Anybody want to guess at what percentage of the voting rights I gave myself?
15%.
50.0. Has anybody ever heard of that? Can anybody conceive of why I would give myself 50.0% of the voting rights? Because it kind of feels like kissing your sister. Like, why would you do that? You know, you're like this close to control. So why not just take 45%? Why 50.0? Anybody have a guess at my thought process?
It forces you to collaborate.
It forces you to collaborate. I have to achieve buy-in from at least one of my partners for any idea. I'm building accountability in for myself, right? If I don't have the quality of thought to argue for my perspective and to convince and persuade other people of it, then it's not worthy of us pursuing it. And this is one of the things collaboration actually forces you to do. It ups your quality of thought by forcing you to be able to advocate for an idea and to cast vision for an idea. Why 50.0? I could have made myself a 45%. Why 50.0?
Forces the other side to do the same thing.
Because, and it gives me the ability to protect the integrity of what the thing is supposed to do. So I want collaboration, but to a point, some things are not on the table. We are going to be about generosity. We are going to give 10% of our profits away. There are certain types of influencers we're not going to work with. There's certain types of business that we're not going to pursue, even if there's profits to be had, because it's antithetical to the thing that I wanted to create. You know? And for somebody else, maybe that's fine, but it wasn't for me. It wasn't the business I wanted to run. And so I simultaneously had the ability to kind of block something that I felt like was not in line with the mission of what we were creating. But I can't force anything down anybody else's throats. I have to achieve buy-in, and that requires collaboration. And more than anything else, I mean, here's the bottom line is, if I want there to be collaboration in my organization, I have to place myself under it. Like founders that say, you know, good for thee, but not for me, that just does not work, right? You have to lead by example. And so it's like, if I want to create a collaborative environment, then I have to create an environment where I'm held to the same standard as other people, where my ideas have to hold up to scrutiny, where I'm not always saying, well, I said it, and so this is what we're going to do. And especially when you're a founder and you kind of between role, shares you hold, soft power, and everything else, you know you could probably force everything through. Choosing to not be that person is a requirement if you're actually trying to foster this type of environment.
Yeah, that's good. So Mike, talk a little bit about leadership development at Simple Modern and where collaboration fits into that model.
Yeah, so one of my favorite stories from our company's history, for many, many years, we went to China 5 to 10 times a year, very often we were over there. And there was a year where Lee Graves, our chief manufacturing officer, I think he was in a plane for like 500 hours. It was like 10 work weeks or something that he was like in the air going to and from China. And this allowed us to not only really understand quite a bit more about the manufacturing process, but to really work hand in hand with them on the development of products, product quality, things like that. When COVID happened, like the trips just ended. Like there was no way to get into China for, I don't know, it might have been 3 years, it was 2.5 years. It was a long time. We just couldn't even get in the country. We have partnered, our primary manufacturing partner is a really growth-minded manufacturer that constantly wants to make their products better. And this continued into COVID. The problem was they made a change that they did not tell us about, that they thought would make things better. And in their testing in China, it did. The problem was when you put it on a container and it sat there for a while, By the time I got to America, it was changing a little valve, and it made it where you couldn't drink out of the water bottle, which is kind of important. And so I was giving my daughter, I'd gotten a new bottle, and I was giving it to my daughter to take a drink out of one night. She was like, I can't drink out of this, Dad. And I tried to, and I was like, I can't either. But every once in a while you get a defective unit, we get a sample in my house or something, it's like, could mean nothing. The next day I went and I started trying some bottles that had just come in from China, and I'm like, okay, I'm alarmed. We go and pull more inventory. We are very alarmed, and by the time we pulled on the thread long enough, we realized that 1 million bottles had shipped that had this default, that was faulted out. Which is, you're now starting to kind of get into like, are we going to have a recall? Like, what is going to happen here, territory? And the person who was always going to lead the fixing of this was, he's been my best friend since high school. He's kind of my right-hand man, who's our chief manufacturing officer, Lee. And Lee's like, this is a problem, I'm taking it really seriously, let me work it. And it's actually interesting, I frustrated him with how I handled it, but I still think it was the right thing to do. I said, here's what we're gonna do, we're gonna get a bunch of people in a room. We are gonna make sure everybody's aware of this. And we're not just gonna bring in senior leaders, we're gonna bring in a bunch of our more junior people, and we're going to have them watch us have a discussion about this really bad thing we just learned. And so for him, it was like, man, it's really uncomfortable because this is embarrassing. But the point in doing it was that I wanted our junior people to watch us work the problem and to watch us collaborate. You know, like, again, we learn through, one of my biggest things is that we are like far more mimetic than we would like to believe. Most of what you do, all of what you do, all of what I do, I don't know, is like little things that you have picked up from people along the way that you're like, that's really cool. I'm gonna do exactly that. The way they said that, the way they moved their hand there, you know what, that mannerism. This is why, like, you go to a church and you hear one of like the associate pastors speak, and it's like they sound just like the lead pastor somehow, you know. We're mimetic. We imitate. And so, how do people learn how to collaborate well, how to foster openness to ideas? Well, they learn about watching people.
How to solve problems.
That's exactly right. And so I view it as a part of leadership development for people, is bringing them into the collaborative process. That doesn't always mean they're going to have something to say or a lot to contribute right off the bat. But even being in the room when a decision, you know, it's like the Hamilton song, it's like just being in the room where it happens is actually quite instructive. Like being able to see how things come from a bunch of disparate ideas to an actual organizational output. And so I do think it's one of the gifts we can give our people, is the earlier we expose them to that, then the quicker they're going to be able to contribute in those settings and feel confident. Because, I mean, remember, getting people to collaborate, it doesn't just mean that you have an environment where it's okay for them to share, it's an environment where they feel confident and safe enough to share. And most people are going to be imagine being in a meeting with me. You're going to be very hesitant to share a dissenting idea unless I bend over backwards to create a culture where it's like, no, we really want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay, Dick Greenlee,
What
first
you do to
hand.
fix it? Come on, you
It's a great story.
It's a milk.
It's a great story. So we decided that the only thing we could do was manually replace all 1 million valves. Oh my gosh. And so I have a picture. I will send it to Lance and he can send it to the group. We partner with a 3PL Encore. We set up a massive rework project in, I don't know, a big warehouse space of, you hear the word 1 million. This is one of my things, is like, I think in the modern world, we regularly deal with numbers that we think we understand, but we don't really have any concept for. Like, I can say the word 1 million, I can say the word 1 billion, but when's the last time you were around 1 million of anything, right? Other than like blades of grass. It's like never. And it is just an almost incomprehensible amount. And this is like, I run a business where we sell tens of millions of things. We sold our 50 millionth bottle last year. Like, I can't comprehend that. My brain is not actually, other than just like kind of hypothetically, and this was one of the first times where it's like, okay, wow, just like seeing it up close, you're like, it's just an endless, infinite amount of bottles. We set up this huge work area. Every single person in the company worked on this. Every single one, myself included. I punched a bunch of valves. We hired a bunch of temp people. A few of them actually went on to work for the company. Actually, like they were temp workers that were high school or college students that we ended up like loving, getting to know them, and then they joined the team. And we manually poked out 1 million valves. So the process was literally, you've got a pallet. The pallet has cartons. You take a carton off. You open the carton. Inside there's a bunch of boxes. You take out the boxes. You open the box. There's a bottle inside a bubble wrap. You take the bottle and bubble wrap out. You take the bottle out of the bubble wrap. You unscrew the bottle from the top. You take the straw out of the bottle. You take the cap. You have like a little paper clip or like, toothpick looking thing. You pop out the old one. Then you had this like little thread, the new one, where you would thread the new one in. It was kind of almost like sewing, and then you pull it. It would snap. The valve's in place. Okay, I take it. I put the straw back in. I screw it back on the bottle. The bottle goes back in the bubble wrap. Bubble wrap goes back in the box. The box goes back in the carton. The carton gets resealed. The carton goes on the pallet. One, and a million of those. Like if you looked at the floor, it looked like it had snowed black silicone, and it was simultaneously terrible and great for our company. I mean, I just think it is interesting when you build something like Simple Modern. I think that the memories I will remember are not the memories I would have anticipated that. And I think it being everybody did it. Everybody sweated. Everybody poked those stupid things out. We all solved it together. Like I just think it ended up being great for the company and for our culture. Yeah.
I've got one more question for you, but I'm going to save it for the very end, and we'll open up. Thank you, Dick, for getting the party started. Kevin, you're next.
I have a quick question, Mike, in regard to collaboration with internal employees and maybe something someone is saying isn't as additive. How do you think about team building and keeping the right people on the bus? How long to keep them, when to promote them, when to demote them, when to move them out? I'm curious how you think about that.
Yeah, so there's probably two kind of sides of this conversation. One is that good leadership is understanding where particular people can contribute effectively, and helping them to have the self-awareness to see that. Young and talented people are kind of the worst in some ways because they just think they just have an opinion about everything. And then it takes a little bit of time to gather the self-awareness and the humility to understand that they should have an opinion about very few things at that stage, and that and I was the same way, I do think that I really enjoy developing young and talented people and helping them to grow in their understanding of where they're actually at in their career, how other people see them, where they have the highest expertise and quality of thought, while simultaneously affirming, I see all this potential in you and you are going to get there. And I'm going to help you get there. But sometimes I'm going to give you some feedback you might not like in order to help you get to be the leader that you want to be. And then there's this other side where it's like sometimes people just aren't at the standard. And I think nothing demotivates really talented people like having to sit through. And so one of the things that I've learned that's counterintuitive, it's interesting, yesterday was my birthday, and
Happy birthday.
thank you. But in one of the meetings, they were doing this kind of affirmation reflection time with me, and Chris Weller, our chief marketing officer, asked, what's one thing that 46-year-old Mike would maybe argue with 30-year-old Mike about? And my answer, kind of on the spot, and I've never said this before, but I think it's true, is that I now more fully, 30-year-old Mike was coming out of full-time ministry and really understood the prioritizing people, loving people, developing people is the most important thing maybe in life. But what he didn't understand is also challenging people is a necessary component. Having a high bar of excellence is kind of a prerequisite to actually doing that well. That if you're not providing both support and challenge, if you don't have a high bar that goes with the high heart, then you actually don't care for people very well. And so people find it pretty profoundly uncaring if you allow a team member to be there that is not contributing or is not in it at the level that they are in it, for example. And so as a leader, sometimes what you have to do is you have to really hold the overall standard of the team very high so that everybody on the team can feel valued and can also achieve their best work. One of the ways we achieve that is we just have it's just really hard. It's just really hard to get into the company. And different, we don't have to have that many employees. I think if I was at a company like Amazon where they have 1 million employees, then I would probably have to think about it differently. The way that we've handled it is just having a very high filter. One of our filters is you have to have multiple personal recommendations from people already in the company to even get into the company. So we have not had the problem frequently of having to say this person just is not at the level to contribute. But we do have the problem fairly frequently of this person does not necessarily have a good assessment of when they should use their voice or what areas their feedback's the most helpful. And that's where, it's interesting because I don't know that I've heard feedback framed as a type of collaboration, but it kind of is. Feedback is kind of a call and response that we use to kind of shape our behavior. And I need people to be a mirror for me or I can't continue to grow. And so one of the ways we collaborate with the people that we manage is that we allow ourselves to be a mirror, even though there's not a lot of necessary upside for us sometimes. It's for their development, and saying, hey, when you look in the mirror, what do you see? Okay, well, when everybody else looks in the mirror, this is what they're seeing. And I see this disconnect, right?
Yeah.
And that can be helpful for people.
That's good. Ben, you had a question?
Just real quick, in the spirit of kind of collaboration, creativity, it's on the high support, high challenge stuff. How do you stay clear of high control and call high challenge? Because a lot of times I think those things get mixed up, right?
Yeah.
I think it's high challenge, but it's really just high control, and that's suffocating to people and disempowering, right? How do you steer clear of that and have the creativity piece of your conversation?
Well, the way that I manage myself, I could probably talk about that for a long time, but the first thing that's popping into my mind is the way that I manage myself. And the way that I manage myself is I want to make the maximum impact with my life that I can. And I want to make the maximum redemptive impact I can make with my life, and the more controlling I am, the lower the scope of my impact is possible, basically. And so I am dooming myself to ineffectiveness if I'm high control. That doesn't mean that I don't have tendencies to want to do it. One of the things my wife and I all joke about is when I'm stressed, the first thing I want to do is I want to clean because it's exerting some control, right? But what I just have to remind myself is that what I'm really trying to do as a leader is create leverage. And that leadership is profoundly interesting when you realize that if you're very good at creating leverage, that you can be involved in 20, 30, 50 different things and impacting them at some level with a single work week. The right hour invested in a particular person, I don't have to think about what they're going and doing, but I can be there, I can make an impact, I can help lead that person. But the trade-off is that my scope is going to be directly proportional to my need for control. The only times that I will exert really high control are when I think it's fairly existentially important that a particular thing go well. For example, we had in our business we have several different verticals. One of them is adult hydration. Adult hydration has been a very trend-driven category, as you've seen with Stanley and Walla. And our share in water bottles has really declined. And we were about to release a new water bottle, and really proud of the product. We think it's great. There's actually 2 of them, another one that'll launch in a couple weeks. It's that needed to go well. It just needed to go well. And so part of me being an effective leader is actually being I'm gonna be a little bit less collaborative on this particular thing. Because really, what people want even more than me being collaborative and their ideas being heard is they want to make sure they have a job and they want the company to do well. And at this point, that's what I need to do. I need to make sure that this goes really well. So there's also a piece of there are times where you need to be high control. And during the trade war, it's I needed to be high control in some areas during the trade war. because of the stakes and because people's jobs were literally at stake. But I try to be as sparingly high control as I possibly can be because I want to have a larger growth impact. So that's how I manage myself. There's a lot of tactics that go with that.
That's good.
Philosophically.
That's good. Gary, you had a question.
Mike, are you using AI anyway in your business, and how do you see AI impacting human capital in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think,
Did you guys
yes,
catch the question?
we are using AI. I think the amount of disruption that's currently happened is uneven. One of the examples I've shared recently, we started partnering with a company about 1.5 years ago in customer support, and it is unbelievable, like how good it is this quickly.
Local company?
No, it's one, maybe a San Francisco company. It's a technology company, but like as an example, like we started by sending it 5% of emails, and now we send it 100% of emails, and the ones where it has a problem, the 5 or 10%, it sends to us. But it's like, and it's just even like the level of it is pretty amazing. Like somebody, we did Thunder Championship Cups, and somebody ordered one from like LA or something, and they had some issue, and so the bot is kind of working them through it, and then it added this paragraph at the end of the email because you can kind of control its tone and stuff, but it's very general. Like it does most of the work. You just kind of say, hey, here's like the tone and voice and stuff. But at the end of the email, it was like, hey, we know it's hard waiting on your cup. You're probably surrounded by Lakers fans there. You've got to represent. And it's like, it's just kind of riffing, and you're like, this is the AI bot just like coming up with this stuff. It was a little bit unsettling.
Sounds like movie friends.
Which, by the way, one of the things that is interesting about AI is that it's easier, I think, for AI to stay out of the ditch. Like if you think about it, what it has like the capacity to look at 10,000 options and do it very quickly, where I don't have the intellectual capacity to do that. And so I found it's really good for brainstorming and kind of like looking at creative or unique ways of looking at a problem. My short answer on AI is that I hold two beliefs simultaneously, and one is, no matter how disruptive you think the technology that's coming is going to be, it's going to be more disruptive. Especially the place I'd start is I think what you're going to see happen in medicine is going to be nothing short of like astounding. Like I think it's, and I know that we've talked about this. It's going to be crazy. I think in terms of the way that we do work and what people are able, like the amount that people are able to accomplish and the level of quality is going to be like very, very different in the years ahead. I think, and so I think it's going to be very, very disruptive. I think on the whole, net, it's going to be really, really positive. But when you're in a disruptive period, it doesn't necessarily feel positive or feel great all the time. And I think we're entering into that. I feel a lot of responsibility to manage that transition in a way that prioritizes people, but is eyes wide open about where we're going. I can't be the buggy whip manufacturer that's like, I'm just going to keep making buggy whips because this is what's best for my people. But I am not one of those people that's like, great, I get to replace all my people with machines. And so one of the things that I'm doing internally is I'm just really pushing people like, I want you to succeed. Everybody eventually leaves the company, whether it's retirement or you start a company, you go to another job or death or whatever, everybody will leave. And it is very important that you embrace this and that you are on the front end of learning this. And so we're really challenging our people, and I could talk for a very long time. But it is real. It's here. It's uneven right now, but it's only getting better. I mean, Google released a tool yesterday, something banana. I can't remember what it is. Nano banana maybe, and it's just like. It's pretty crazy. I mean, it's like maybe better than Photoshop, like the ability to do stuff. And it's like, it's like the frog in boiling water right now. It's just like the drumbeat. It's like, oh, this week's ChatGPT 5, and this week Google has this huge, new thing. And now there's this new video model, and that we're a little bit numb to the rapidness of it right now. But the cumulative effect, if you kind of zoom out and say, well, what's changed in 2 years? And the answer is quite a bit. So anyway, yeah.
Kat's giving us the wrap it up signal. I've got one more question. So, Mike, when you, this is a room full of founders and ecosystem leaders. that really care about our city and really are kind of believing that God's going to do, things that really matter in the world here in our city. When you pray for Oklahoma City and you pray for other founders, what's kind of on your heart in this season?
Well, I do think, this is the reason why I love to come and speak to this type of a group. There's a lot of speaking opportunities, but there's certain ones that I always try and do if I possibly can. That's because I think everybody in this room is kindred spirits, and that like our heart for people, our heart for the physical place that God has placed us is similar. I think one thing is just that Oklahoma City is unique. Like there is some of the heritage of the city, some of the makeup of the city. It is unique, and I'm really glad that out of the places I could be placed, I'm glad to be here. I think my encouragement. I'll give you this encouragement because I think this is the thing that I have to tell myself. I'm a very driven person. How many people in the room would describe themselves as a driven person? Right? Okay. Probably not in the room. If you would, I used to think leadership was about building organizations. Part of this is I'm an Enneagram 3, and so the lens that I want to see the world through is achievement. That like my life has meaning and purpose if I achieve, if I accomplish. And it's so deeply like woven into like the way that I think that I've kind of tried to break that, and then I've realized like you're not breaking that. And so instead, if you can't break that, what you can do is you can be really intentional about how you define achievement and success. And for me, that's the key. Like to live the life that I feel like God's called me to do. I have to really be intentional about how am I going to define success and achievement. And I used to think that leadership and achievement was about building organizations, but the longer I do it, the more I realize it's just about the people, Simple Modern might exist in 50 years. I don't know. It might exist for 5 more months. It's like my attitude is like it's here until it's not. But even quite frankly, if it was still here in 50 years or 500 years, that doesn't really matter to me because in as much as for me as a leader, what really matters, and I think what God's really concerned about is how am I impacting the relationships of people that are there with me right now. I was in full-time ministry, and a few years actually after I left working for Crew at OU, they had a few years where they didn't even have a ministry at OU. And my wife was like, how does that make you feel? Like, does it make you feel like, you invested all this time and it kind of was for naught? And I'm like, no, I don't think really, because really what was important were the people, the men and women that I impacted when I was there. And that's all that matters, Matt Chandler's this pastor, and he tells a story about being at a pastor's retreat. And they were asking a similar question, like, what's your vision for your church? And what's the 50 year? And people are giving these long answers, and he was like, I don't care. He's like, I don't care where the church is in 50 years. Like, if there's a great pastor, then people will be there, and God will be ministering to them. And if not, they'll go to other great churches, and they'll be ministered to. I don't care what happens to the village. And I think that there's a maturity that we can reach as leaders where, in some ways you could just say, am I building my kingdom or am I building somebody else's kingdom? And I'm so tempted to want to build my own kingdom. But I know that's not the life I want to live. And I know that's not the life of lasting meaning and purpose that I can live. And so I think that'd be my prayer for myself and for everybody in leadership in the city. That you've been placed in a position of leadership for a reason by God to make a redemptive impact on the lives of people. And it will profoundly matter to the people that are under your leadership how you lead them. And that impact is eternal in nature, and that there's basically nothing in the world that's eternal except for that. And so the organizations we lead, the P&Ls we're in charge of, the accomplishments that we could list on a resume are very finite, but the way that we impact the men and women along the way is infinite and eternal, and so we should keep our focus on that.
Good. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Thank thank you guys so much for coming. Our team lights up when we see you. Oh, Matt's here. Oh, look, Tracy's here. Oh, we just get so excited. It's our favorite time to be together. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being involved. We just wanted to give you two other opportunities to stay plugged in. So we have QR codes up here for our annual Cultivate Christmas party coming up in December. And then the 2026 Summit. This is an early access QR code. So if you want a specific workshop to get into, you can, I don't know, maybe have a chance to do that. So scan those so you can get those on your calendar. We would love for you to be, especially at these two things. It's an easy way to be involved and to see everyone at those things. So just thanks to Mike again. He's already back out there, but we loved having him and we loved having all of you. So we hope that this encourages you in the rest of your day. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.